Hello everyone, and welcome to my wish list for the 50 things I'd like to see changed in the Monster Hunter World Iceborne expansion. Before we begin, I want to warn you that this wish list is not just a bunch of monsters I'd like to see added to the expansion. I feel like that's an issue that gets talked about all the time, and I can write it off the list by simply saying, we'd like to see 20 or more monsters added to the game. I hope they're great. So I just didn't want to occupy the list with a bunch of monster names. The other thing I want to do is plug my Discord server real fast. I'm going to be focusing my attention as a YouTuber on Monster Hunter for the foreseeable future. The Discord is a Monster Hunter Discord. It has 6,500 members. We host a competition called the Turf Wars. Pretty fun. You should check that out. And we have a lot of LFG channels for you to use in order to find people to play with. So consider joining. As always, there's a link in the description. Alright, now let's get started with the wish list. Some of the wishes are going to be very brief, some of them will be very long, and those will require kind of a heavier analysis or explanation. Number 1, PC is caught up to the consoles. I think that's one that we can all agree on. When the PC doesn't get to experience new DLC at the same rate that the consoles do, the problem is it all kind of gets spoiled, doesn't it, right? Everything new shows up on the internet, and of course the majority of PC players are going to go look that up. And I think it just kind of ruins the experience in just one manner. It's not really a surprise when it eventually comes out on the PC. You also have to sit there impatiently waiting for it to arrive. So I don't mind if there has to be a little bit of a content drought for the consoles in order for the PC to catch up. Hopefully not too large of a content drought, but I would like to see them all on the same level. Number 2, characters can be ported between consoles. So I bought a gaming PC, and then I purchased Monster Hunter World for a second time. That's another $60 that they earned off of me. Only to discover there's really no way to kind of like port your character over. They want you to start the game completely over again. And I found that to be kind of disappointing. I imagine it can't be that complicated to create a system where the game recognizes your character, goes up to a database, and then you pull that character back down from the database onto the other platform. I really think that would be a great idea. It's kind of a workaway to actually having true crossplay, which is number 3, by the way. Number 3, there should be crossplay. So we should catch up the PC. All characters should be portable between consoles, and then there should be crossplay. This is really important because it consolidates all of the platforms into one game. Well, it's not necessarily one gaming experience, but it allows you to connect together as a community and be able to play with each other. And for a game like this, where it's really not competitive, it's a third-party publisher, I feel like that's super appropriate. Number 4, the whole game then gets ported over to the Nintendo Switch. So I've heard the arguments that Capcom wanted a certain player experience that included a certain graphical quality. I just don't feel like there's any reason why they couldn't port it over to the Switch, and I think if they did, it actually would be purchased in a heavy amount. I mean, it had great success on the PlayStation, on the Xbox, on the PC. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't sell well on the Switch. They would just maybe tweak the game to have lower graphics. I don't know how difficult that is because I don't make video games, but I imagine it's possible, right? I really do. And they could even make it so that maybe there's no crossplay between Switch and the other consoles. Whatever they need to get done, they really should try to do it. It's a terrific game, and I think it's just a little too bad that it's not also selling on the Nintendo. They've probably asked themselves the same question if they could actually do that. Number 5, I'd like to see new arena modes, including a build your own set fight. Okay, so you actually put together, using your own weapons, your own armor, your best possible set for an actual arena fight. And let's say they even had an option for TA rules right in the fight, right? Yeah, like a TA run against XYZ monster. You just set it up and go like Legos, right? You can build anything you want. It's a build your own arena, and I think that would be really terrific for creating a standard for speedrunners, because right now speedrunning is the primary PvP mode in Monster Hunter World. I know you guys probably don't like to call it that, but that's what it is. When you're speedrunning, you're trying to beat everyone else's time. That's the primary purpose of a true speedrun, is to become the best. So I would love it if Capcom actually took a little while with the arena and just set it up so that we could create an easy standard for people to actually do this. Number 6, more meaningful arena rewards, including and maybe especially for holding on to the world record for a particular speedrun. So I talked about taking the arena and making it more of a standard for speedrunners to go in and compete against each other. And then what I think Capcom should do is add really cool arena rewards for players who actually create and hold on to a world record for a long time. It could even be an expiring weapon where if you lose your world record, the weapon actually disappears after like a day. So you get like a day to get your world record back. I think that would be a great incentivizer for players to get into speedrunning, and I think that it would also allow you to show off a weapon that only you own because you've actually done something very special. Number 7, I'd love to see an arena exclusive monster, right? So you have tons of monsters who are exclusive to the regular gameplay where they don't show up in the arena at all. I would love to have just one monster that's exclusive to the arena, so players, if they want to go fight this monster, have to actually go over there and learn how to use the arena. And yeah, I think it could just be a lot of fun. It doesn't have to be the best monster in the game or the most important monster in the game, just something, you know what I mean? It could even be like a friendly monster who helps you train and you don't actually kill it, it just helps you. Whatever it is they want to do, I don't care. Number 8. One day, I would like Capcom to actually try implementing an asymmetrical PvP mode where one player plays as the monster and the other 3 play as hunters trying to take down that monster. Nothing too complex, just maybe like a trial to see if the community enjoys it and to see what Capcom can actually kind of cook up for us. Change number 9. I'd like Capcom to upgrade the UI for choosing armor. Right now, it's just a grid of duplicate icons, right? So the armor icons look exactly the same, except for you can differentiate them by color. There's orange, purple, blue, right? So really terrible system. So the problem is you have to actually scroll over each of your rarity 8 armor to try and find the one you're looking for, because the little picture will pop up in the screen as you scroll by. That's a terrible UI, I really think so. Number 10, similarly, the UI for choosing decorations is god-awful. The order of the decorations changes depending on what size slot you're trying to fill. So you try to fill a small decoration slot, it's going to pop up easy. You're going to get right into the small decorations. But let's say you're filling a large decoration slot with a small decoration. The order of the small decorations changes, and it's insane. It's just a terrible system. Decorations should have a set order no matter what slot you're trying to fill. Number 11, when you're scrolling through all of the decorations that you own, you'll notice that a whole bunch of them are already in armor, and this gets put into like its own separate list, right? Well, there definitely needs to be a remove all button for these decorations. I don't know why they list the decorations this way. It doesn't change anything about how I put builds together. It doesn't help with anything. I mean, sometimes I have to scroll through like 5 pages of decorations just to find something that I only have a few of, like maybe guard up. It's like, oh, it's already in another build. That's why I couldn't find it in the list. It's just silly. It's not a very good design. It doesn't actually help with anything in my opinion, because when you're changing loadouts, it's going to automatically fill things anyways. So yeah, I would really like a remove all button, or they should just treat decorations as if you're pulling them straight out of the armor all the time without actually listing them in the armor. Number 12 is pretty small. I just want to have more control over the quick menu, right, that you can scroll left and right on. I want to remove things like the net from it. So if you're fighting the behemoth, you know you're not going to be using the net, and that's why the net and the barbecue spit you should be able to remove those from it. Number 13, this is an interesting one. I'd love, when you play on PC, you get introduced to a number of mods, and some of the mods are actually a clear upgrade to what we already have in the game, and one of them in particular that I really think Capcom should just adopt into their primary game are the light pillars. There's a light pillar mod for when an item is dropped, a little light pillar shoots up. Makes it very easy to pick up items. There's no reason they couldn't have it in the main game. It doesn't really change anything, it just makes the game easier to play. Number 14, and I've heard a number of people ask for this, I think that the training room should become a lot more sophisticated for people who want to understand the game better. The training room should include a second pole with different hit zone values favorable to elemental damage. The training room should also include a damage overlay option that can calculate DPS from your combos so that you can actually calculate optimal damage right inside of the game rather than looking outside of the game. Number 15, this is a trickier issue and a larger subject to talk about. I feel that Monster Hunter World has a problem with endgame reward diversity. For example, to finish your Greatsword collection, all you need to do is play an easy event quest called Every Hunter's Dream, and then you're completely done. You have the strongest Greatsword in the game by far, and there's absolutely no reason to own any other greatsword. They designed all these other greatswords, meaningless. To me, this is a serious problem because loot is a big reason to play the game. There's a lot of different ways to address this issue, and what I'd like to do is outline what's causing it. First of all, every greatsword is exactly the same. I mean that they're the same in the way that they have the same moveset, they have the same range, they have the same attack speed, which means they only vary by damage output. Capcom also didn't release any greatswords where you could consider elemental damage builds or ailment builds, and this contributes to the problem a bit. I would say one of the problems is that the developers are assuming it's going to take the players a long time to figure out which weapons deal the optimal damage. So the primary problem in the example I gave you is that the only thing differentiating two weapons from each other is damage output. There's really no variety in the weapons at all. After that, I'd say there's an assumption coming from the developers, and the assumption is that it's going to take most players a long time to figure out which weapons are going to deal optimal damage. However, with the internet, it's now very easy to figure out which weapons deal the most damage. This is why I think Capcom should just allow players to calculate the damage in-game at this point, because all of us YouTubers are already doing it. They should also move on to a new reward model that isn't based on our lack of knowledge, because we don't have a lack of knowledge. I mean, a little bit we do, but it's very easy to fix now. Similar to Capcom hiding the real hit zone values on monsters, I also feel like there's no reason to be doing that. I feel like there's no reason for them to make it complicated to understand how damage output works. They should just make it so that everyone can understand right in the game. So now I'm supposed to talk about solutions to the lack of weapon diversity. I think a very easy solution that doesn't, mess with the current reward system is just to include weapon skins for us to go after. But to really address the problem, if Capcom wants to continue with rewards that have a preset arrangement of stats, they need to include more differentiations between the weapons so that they don't just boil down to a damage output number. So I would say, stop letting us build 40 different greatswords, make it like 15 different greatswords, but make them all completely unique from each other. One way they could do this is by offering a distinct special attack to each greatsword, and I mean to each greatsword, a distinct move. Another way they could do this is by changing the attack speed and length of each greatsword, and of course the third way they could do this is by offering more than one archetype of movesets. So right now we already know greatswords have a simple attack loop that you repeat over and over again to optimize your damage. It's the same for every weapon. What I'm saying is half of the weapons should get one archetype. I should say half of the weapons in that weapon class should get one archetype, and the other half of the weapons in that weapon class should get the other archetype, so that there's just more variety. So that's what I'm recommending Capcom does for the weapon design in Iceborne. I'm suspecting they mostly won't, and will once again just focus on calculating the highest damage output, and all weapons that fall underneath that one highest damage greatsword will become immediately obsolete. It's sad, but it's probably true. So that was change number 15, and it was a big one. Change number 16 is to just make the weapons in the game look better, or at least have your best looking weapons be your most powerful weapons. There are a lot of weapon designs in Monster Hunter World that I would describe as too simple and almost like a copy and paste of monster scales and feathers onto a reoccurring base design. It's really bad, which moves us into problem number 17. Kulve Taroth. Kulve Taroth is a perfect example of artificially extending the playability of the replayability of your game by offering incredibly stingy RNG drop rates. Whew! I ran a live stream against her where I played something like 26 rounds against Kulve Taroth, Arch-Tempered Kulve Taroth, before I got just one new weapon. That's not fun. It's extremely frustrating because the weapon I'm grinding for isn't even that important to me. It's just a marginally stronger version of the one I already own. And the weapon design is an ugly copy and paste, which makes sense because Capcom keeps adding so many meaningless weapons to her loot pool. Why would they work super hard to make those weapons? This all just kind of goes hand in hand with how Capcom is handling weapon design in Monster Hunter World. I don't agree with it. I think they could really improve it. If you look closely, Kulve weapons are just recycled weapon skins from lower down the upgrade tree for that weapon, and then they pasted gold over it. Each of the Kiar weapons is either a marginal upgrade over the old meta, or they're already obsolete, which again should be a reminder that there's a problem with diverse rewards in this game. Now that I've explained what I think is wrong with the Kulve Taroth fight, let's talk about what's right, getting people to actually use the Gathering Hub. I think Capcom should just change the trade yard in Astera to be the new Gathering Hub, and bring the Arena Lass over, by the way. In fact, let's go ahead and make that suggestion change number 17 and move on to 18. For change 18, if Iceborne offers another siege mode, it should offer more than one siege monster. That way, if you're feeling a bit bored with somebody like Arch-Tempered Kulve Taroth, you could take a break from her and farm a different RNG loot pool from a different siege monster. Now, the obvious trick here would be to just have Kulve Taroth carry over into Iceborne and offer one new monster, but I would say Capcom should go further than that and offer 2 new siege monsters minimum. I'll let you guys suggest what those monsters ought to be. I think the siege mode is Capcom's best multiplayer mode, but it desperately needs more monster variety. Not to mention, it should include those changes to the reward system that I suggested, but I really doubt that it will. Change number 19. I also want to reiterate a special reward that I think Capcom should implement. I've mentioned this before in one of my other videos. Some people refer to it as a white whale reward. It's something that has an extremely low drop rate, but it's so cool that you keep grinding for it. In Monster Hunter Iceborne, I think this can be implemented by giving the most difficult monsters one piece of armor and one weapon or weapon skin that has an incredibly low chance of dropping as a reward whenever you fight that particular monster. Okay, so we're talking about special rewards for each individual monster. Here's an example. Let's say the Ancient Leshen. This is a tough fight, and after you've done unlocking a few things, there's really no reason to fight him anymore. Well, in my reward system, Capcom would add a helmet that looks kind of like the Ancient Leshen head with the cool looking antlers. And for the skins, the weapon skins, it'll have something useful for the hunting horns. It could be like it could be a skin, or it could be an actual weapon that he drops. It could be a hunting horn, and on the hunting horn you have like his claw, and the claw's pointing forward with that finger. You know, like the motion he does when he's calling in Jaggers, right? And what you could do is when you're actually using this hunting horn, it could either have a special buff or just a passive ability where revoltures fly around you, or maybe a pet Jagras shows up and fights at your side. So these would be examples of really special, unique rewards that have an incredibly low RNG drop rate, and they just drop from that monster. So you can pick that monster and farm the heck out of him trying to get those special rewards. So again, this is just another idea I have for the rewards. We've talked about taking the rewards we have now and making them truly unique, because they should be truly unique and roughly the same damage to each other, because the problem is now people just calculate which, let's say, greatsword is doing the most damage, and then they don't touch any other greatsword. And then we talked about getting rid of the ugly weapon designs, like for example with all of the Kulve Taroth weapons. And finally, we've talked about having really special rewards just for a particular monster, right? If you want the special rewards for Rathalos, you have to farm Rathalos. All right? Let's get back to simple changes that I'd like to see in Monster Hunter Iceborne. Number 20, I'd like to see an improvement to trading. Right now, I haven't traded a single item with anyone because there's no need to. I know it would be pretty complex. I know it would be exceedingly complex for Capcom to establish a full in-game economy between players, but if they could pull this off, it would actually bring a whole new layer of complexity and fun to the reward system. Capcom would have to offer purchasable goods that can really quickly eat through your Zenny, though, so that there isn't a constant inflation of goods thanks to the Zenny you can earn, well, not just Zenny, but rewards you can earn by farming monsters like Kulve Taroth. It's just an idea and something a lot of loot-driven games are kind of ignoring. Number 21, the poison ailment needs to be strongly improved before anyone serious will be willing to use it. I mean, right now, the only reason to use a poison weapon is if that weapon basically has enough raw damage that it outplays other raw weapons, and to be honest, that's kind of true for sleep and paralysis weapons as well. Right now, bows and bowguns run a heavy monopoly on sleep and paralysis. No one uses poison. Even when you're using a bowgun, you don't really bother with poison. And blast weapons are just kind of a different type of raw damage, isn't it? So reworking of the ailment weapons in general would be nice. The problem comes back to the issue that players are only valuing the optimal damage weapon in the game and not really using anything else. Number 22, I think it's time for Capcom to introduce weapons that have double ailments, something cool like blast and poison together. And don't forget, this is in the case where poison has been reworked to actually be good. So yeah, something like that, blast and poison together. They've done this before with like ice damage and blast damage. Just, I would like to see more of that. I don't know why they haven't done more of that, but I think it's really cool, and especially double elements would be cool. Number 23, a short one. The mounting minigame should never end without the player being allowed to use their finishing move. I have no idea why this happens. You'll mount a monster, you'll start stabbing them with your knife, you're hoping to get that finishing move at the end, and then the monster just falls over early. It's very annoying. Number 24, I was never a fan of Basilgeuse interrupting my fights. I know people like this monster, but I find it extremely unfun, and always have. Maybe you disagree. One thing they could have done is to just have Basilgeuse not roar so much, and then maybe I wouldn't have found it so annoying. But it's really not that fun to have Basilgeuse fly in. You either have dung pods or you don't, and then he roars like 20 times. Number 25, this one's for the bowguns. I would like to see the dragon ammo get reworked so that we can reasonably kill a monster with only dragon ammo. Currently that would be ridiculous to do just because you'd run out of reserves quickly. I think it's a really odd ammo type thanks to its physics, and it's just a shame we don't get to use it more seriously. I know one of you is going to like point me to a video and be like, look, I killed him only with dragon ammo, but I'm talking about like, we should be able to carry 60 shots in reserves. That's what I'm talking about. Number 26, I'd like to see some of the weapons that have scored consistently at the bottom of weapon popularity to make some changes to their whatever they need to do, like their moveset, their damage, their playability, I don't know, just whatever they need. I would like to see players use them more often so that the list isn't fully dominated by longswords, and on the opposite end you have hunting horns being used by like 1% of the population. Buff the hunting horns already. Nobody's going to be mad if you buff the hunting horns. Nobody's going to be like, oh, that's not fun, right? Just go ahead and do it. Number 27, I really think Capcom is missing out with all of the potential you could have with the slinger pod ammo. They already have throwing knives in the game, but I almost never get to use them. I think it would be hilarious if they added some seriously powerful pods that can actually compete with your weapon output, which is really what you need if you want to see players actually prioritize the pods for once. So for example, if they added something like cluster pods, which mimic cluster bombs, oh my god, that'd be funny. Or sticky pods that mimic sticky ammo, right? Alternatively, I'd love to see slinger pod ammo that gives you a temporary shield, as well as slinger pod ammo that can offer a temporary powerful melee attack. There's a lot of room for creativity that I think is completely overlooked. Number 28, Capcom should get serious about offering a silly weapon to every weapon class. They took time to make hundreds of obsolete serious weapons that no one uses because they aren't strong enough, so having at least one joke weapon per class actually makes a lot of sense. Number 29. Obviously, I've been saying this from the start, but I'll say it again. All armor in the game should be turned into layered armor, and all of it should be accessible all of the time. The lack of fashion in Monster Hunter World is criminal. What are they holding off on? I have no idea. Number 30, I feel like this is one that you guys have talked about a lot. It would be interesting if there was a new weapon class added to the game. I have several ideas for what I think would make a good new weapon class, but I'm probably going to save that commentary for maybe another video. I actually have a list of weapons I'd like to see added. Number 31. Another topic I could make a whole video about are future collaborations I would like to see. Let's just hope they don't do another Assassin's Creed type collaboration and stick closer to what we've seen with the Behemoth and Ancient Leshen. Number 32, I guess I will weigh in a little bit on the monsters I'd like to see in Monster Hunter Iceborne, but I don't want to over-elaborate. So I've seen some of the monsters from the previous games, and the one that I'm hoping to see more than others, or I should say the group I'm hoping to see more than others, are actually insect monsters. I know there's other types of monsters like crabs, you got monkeys, right? But insects, I'm a big fan of bugs, and I would love to see a giant bug make it into Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Number 33, I actually don't want to see a hot drink added to Iceborne. I think the cool drink mechanic was pretty boring, to tell you the truth, right? It's just like, here's a cool drink, you can grab a mushroom and have it, you can grab it out of the community chest. It basically just penalizes your item pouch if you think about it, as well as maybe peak performance. With peak performance, like if you're annoyed and you don't want to drink the cool drink, say goodbye to peak performance. It's not going to work, right? So I thought the cool drink was terrible. If they do add hot drink, it needs to be more sophisticated and more fun. Number 34, I've heard people talk about wanting a deeper, more complex story. The thing is, I'm not really the kind of person who cares too much about storytelling in video games. Remember the story for early Mario games? Those are the stories I like in my video games. They're almost not there. However, I do have to say, getting through the campaign in Monster Hunter World was one of the grindiest, least fun parts of the entire game. For Iceborne, they should give us a romance, more humor, and how cool would it be if someone like the Admiral could actually fight alongside you as an NPC, which is what I really want. Number 35, a rebalancing of the armor meta. Right now, it's pretty strongly in favor of Master's Touch, which we get from just 2 armor sets, and then bowguns use Spare Shot from the Zenitjiva Gamma set. So after the release of the Kjar weapons that have built-in critical element and they have built-in critical status, we basically only need the Draken armor set, sometimes the Teostra armor set. I also want to mention that unlike the weapon rewards, which I think could be made much better by adding some randomness to it, maybe some diversity to it, I think the very static armor designs in Monster Hunter World work very well, because it creates build standards and a clear RNG structure for the build designs. I just want a rebalancing of the actual armor meta, that's all. Number 36, there are a few armor set bonus skills that I think should be turned into decorations at this point, and some new set bonus skills should then be added to the game. I already talked about this issue in my All Skills Reviewed Part 2 video, so I don't want to break down all those armor skills again. Let's just say there's some set bonus skills you'll never use unless they turn them into decorations. Number 37, I would love to see a game mode or an option that comes with a full scoreboard. I would like at least some of the more difficult hunts in the game, like the Behemoth, the Ancient Leshen, maybe Arch-Tempered fights, Arch-Tempered Zenitjiva. If you can include a scoreboard for those that shows us all of the meeting data on what happened in those fights, it would give you a chance to see how well you performed from fight to fight. This is something I'd really badly like to see. I don't know, well, I understand the argument that, it might scare away new players, but seriously, scoreboards are a lot of fun for players who have been playing for a long time, not just to compare yourself to others, but really to compare yourself against yourself, right? So even if they made the scoreboard just a scoreboard that only includes your damage output, only includes your performance this run as opposed to other runs, right? They could do something like that. Scoreboards are a lot of fun. They've been in video games since the beginning of video games. We really should think about it. Number 38. This one might be a bit more controversial, but I think the timer should not exist in regular hunts. It just doesn't make any sense in terms of realism, and it punishes players that put 49 minutes into a hunt just to fail at 50 minutes. You can still have the timer for some endgame content like Extreme Behemoth if you really want, but again, to me, it just adds artificial difficulty for your fights. You can replace the timer with the simple clock that tells you how long the fight is taking. I think that's preferable. Number 39, I think it would be nice if you could have trophies from difficult monster fights to add as decorations to your room. It could be another one of those ultra rare drops, maybe it's something you can get when you fight the largest monster or the smallest monster of that class, right? There's a lot you could do with decorating your room that currently you don't do. I never go into my room in Monster Hunter World. I'm trying to avoid that load screen, and they really should think of ways to improve it. Number 40, I think it would be fun if the game allowed cross-dressing of armor. That way you can experience both female and male armor, no matter what gender you chose for your character at the start of the game. I have 2 accounts, because I play on both console and PC, and I didn't realize just how much of the armor designs I was actually missing out on until I started playing with the female player model. Number 41, getting back to the story, I think it would be funny if you could pick one of the NPCs, like roaming around the trade yard, and basically develop a romance with them the way you could in Mass Effect. It doesn't have to be as R-rated as Mass Effect. I mean, of course it's not going to be. They could just make it a simple thing where you can choose someone to date, and maybe they can join you in certain single-player hunts. So I've already mentioned the Admiral joining you as an NPC who can actually fight alongside you. That would be cool. But then also if you could date Sisterly Fourth and she joins as well, that would be very cool. Number 42, I would like the bouncing bombs to actually do decent damage to flying monsters like Kushala Daora. At least as much damage as a Mega Barrel Bomb, Maybe Capcom is worried we'll be able to hold too many explosive damage items in reserve, and they're like, well, they don't even need to use the weapons at this point? I have no idea. But there's a lot of items you never use, like the boomerang, the binoculars, and I think it's time for Capcom to kind of rework those so that they're actually useful. Number 43, in the Gathering Hub, there should be more games other than arm wrestling. So arm wrestling is like a little mini PvP mode. It's just a bit of a joke game, but I think that it adds a bit of fun when you're sitting there waiting for your friends to get ready or to do something. So they could add something else like tic-tac-toe, or maybe even chess and checkers if they want to get really complex. Number 44, to go along with my request for more layered armor, I also think Capcom should let us create a few layered armor loadouts for our fashion. Number 45, I also think it's important that Iceborne doesn't overly focus on ice monsters. I think there should be a new balance between ice monsters, thunder monsters, water monsters, and fire monsters, which means we should barely be seeing any new fire monsters. We already have a ton, right? And then we should be seeing much more of the ones we have the least of, as well as, let's not forget ailment monsters, right? So like a sleep monster, a poison monster, paralysis, all of that would be very fun. Number 46, I've heard a lot of people ask for underwater combat. And while I don't oppose underwater combat just because I'm happy to have anything, I have to say, underwater combat from the previous games was super unrealistic if you have even a basic understanding of physics. If everyone was using a harpoon gun and oxygen tank underwater, this would make a lot of sense. But obviously, a real greatsword would drag you straight to the bottom of the water, and you wouldn't be able to swing it in any meaningful way if you wanted even a little bit of realism. And yes, I realize this is a game where you can jump from any height you want to, really, without taking any damage. And again, I'm actually okay with underwater combat. I'm just saying there's a point where the lack of realism can actually start to have an effect on how you see the game, and that's probably something the developers are already discussing, not to mention how much trouble would it be to really set up underwater combat at this point. Number 47, what do you guys think of Capcom including new microtransaction emotes? As long as it's only emotes, I don't think it would be such a big deal. I would also be okay if they did a better job advertising those for sale emotes in the actual game. One of the things Monster Hunter World has done is it's attempted to be a true games as service type of game with continuous drip content and rotating events. For example, we just got the Ancient Lesson, as well as we have the upcoming Arch-Tempered Nergigante. In order to justify having a team stay behind to work on that drip content that extends the life of the game, typically the monetization model for these types of games is to offer microtransactions. If Capcom could guarantee a certain quality in the drip content, I would be okay with more microtransactions to support that. I would probably even buy a few of them. It would also be important that they guarantee nothing meaningful gets monetized. So I never want to see special layered armor get monetized, no weapons, nothing like that, just emotes. Alright, we're almost at the end. Number 48. In Monster Hunter World, we had 2 monsters added who were the true endgame. This would be the Ancient Lesson from the Witcher crossover and the Behemoth from the Final Fantasy crossover. As of this video, there's still time for them to make Arch-Tempered Nergigante the most difficult fight in the game, and that's mostly what I'm hoping for, because I think it would be more appropriate if the endgame had more challenges and they were from the actual Monster Hunter universe, not other games. Not to say that there's anything wrong with the Behemoth or Ancient Lesson, it's more like the lack of other endgame fights from the monsters we already had in the game is a bit disappointing. There's also plenty of Tier 1 and Tier 2 monsters that I would have liked to fight as arch-tempered versions of that fight. And Capcom kind of played with this idea by releasing the Greatest Jagras, the names Lavasiath, and even that funny Mosswine event that they released for New Year's. However, I'd really like it if the Tier 1 and Tier 2 monsters could be properly difficult, especially when you have fights like Barrett and Gyrototus that were really missed out on in the endgame. They have unique movesets, but you just don't fight them anymore because they don't offer any meaningful rewards and they're too easy. Number 49. Capcom should add some kind of prestige title for your Hunter rank and allow it to reset back down to Hunter rank 1, but you get maybe like a little special medal next to your name or something like that, and you can only reach this after you've gone all the way to Hunter rank 999 plus 1. I think for players who have put the most time into the game, not being able to work on your Hunter rank anymore is probably kind of disappointing. And finally, number 50, in the Witcher Special Quest, we were introduced to a Gashalaka chief we actually had a fight. I would love to see an Arch-Tempered Gajalaka fight. It could be in the arena or something like that, and Capcom could actually work a few serious moves into this character to make it more fleshed out and more of a serious fight. It would also be cool if the chief could be added to your party every now and then. So even if they could only implement this in Iceborne, I love that they had the Moss Wine event. I love that we got to fight the Gajalaka chief, and I'd love to see more of that, and I'd love it to be more sophisticated. Alright, and I'm going to go ahead and end the list there, although I could have easily kept going because there's just so many things to talk about improving or adding to the game with the upcoming Iceborne DLC. I want to thank James Brook for supporting my channel, and then I'd like to thank all of you for watching the video, and I'll see you guys next time.